Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. This is the antidote for corporate media. I am the most suppressed and censored comedian commentator in America as we speak. And what you're seeing on your screen is the IDF protecting them, but Israeli authorities filling a well that serves water. They're filling it with cement, a well that serves water to thousands and thousands of Palestinians. They're filling it not with water, but with cement. They are cementing off a heavily used well that gets water to thousands and thousands of people. And you might be tempted, if you're one of these lunatics who supports Israel's special genocide operation, you might be tempted to go, well, what do you expect? It's war. All bets are off. Go for it. Do what you can. But even that argument, as dumb as it is to begin with, would only apply to Gaza, right? This is yesterday or recently, the past few days, in the West Bank. This is standard Israel apartheid regime doing whatever they can to destroy and harm and disturb the lives of Palestinians. And right here is video of them in the West Bank sealing a well with cement that provides water to thousands of Palestinians. This type of practice is not uncommon. Of course, you have the ongoing settler colonial project of kicking Palestinians out of their houses, out of their lands, off of their fields, and bulldozing the houses or taking them over in various cases. They also do a lot of things just to make life hell for Palestinians that remain in these areas. Things such as capping off their water, things such as spraying sewage at their houses. I saw a video of that the other day. And again, this is not even in Gaza. This is just standard practice in the West Bank for Israel in their ongoing special genocide operation. I have so much for you coming up in this hour or more on the antidote to corporate media. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for supporting this show. I have new UN report about the famine in Gaza. I have the Democrats are saying the quiet part loud. They are saying that it is all out war against third parties. And I'm going to be getting into that story, the details of how exactly the DNC and the Democrats plan to fight this war, plan to wage this war against third parties. That's by their own phrase. That's their own phrasing right there. War against third parties. Of course, they've been at war against third parties for years, but apparently they're stepping it up a notch because it hasn't been enough of a war against third parties. I'm going to be bringing you that story, and I actually have more information on why exactly it is likely that Israel and the United States are building a pier, a port to Gaza, as opposed to just allowing aid in through all of the several entrances into Gaza that are all sealed off. Why build a port? Why build a pier? Why drop totem little aid packages from rainbow colored parachutes so we can say we're the good liberals, Joe Biden, and we drop aid down to Palestinians? But why build that pier? And I have brought you various information on various ideas and thoughts on that before. So this isn't the first time I'm covering this insane, ridiculous, laughable pier that the U.S. and Israel is building off of Gaza. But I have new information on that. And actually, it goes back to an article from 2015. So very few people have been talking about this aspect of it. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and show, we got to keep it up with creative activism and various ways of highlighting this ongoing genocide in Gaza. And this is actually in California. People late of 13,000 outfits for the 13,000 children that have been murdered by Israel in Gaza. The percentage of children being murdered is far higher than it is in other modern conflicts. This is 13,000 outfits laid across the beach in California. I can't remember, was it Santa Cruz? Anyway, in California to, again, highlight the 13,000 children. It's really more than that because that doesn't count the kids lost under rubble but 13,000 outfits along the beach. It went for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And, you know, it is tough to get the human brain to wrap around these numbers. What does 13,000 dead children look like? It's not something we can really comprehend or want to comprehend. And things like this, activism like this, someone's telling me, yes, it was Santa Cruz. It helps give people the ability to somehow wrap your brain around this horror show. Someone in the chat there asked, you know, said, I'm obsessed with Israel. Why am I only covering Israel? Well, actually, I cover a lot of things. I've covered a lot of things other than Israel, but I have been covering heavily Israel and Israel's ongoing genocide. By the way, this is day number 165. The estimates are 31,819 Palestinians have been killed, with 73,900 wounded. Of course, many of those wounded will go on to die from their wounds because of the health systems have been completely and utterly destroyed across Gaza, and that is intentional. That is Israel hoping that more people will die from their wounds. And the commenter was asking, you know, or saying, accusing me of being obsessed with Israel. And I pointed out, well, I would hope we're all obsessed with genocide. I would hope we're all obsessed with it until we stop it. And, well, you know, find your way of joining the fight against this genocide, whether it's getting information out there, whether it's being part of activism like the one I'm showing here on the screen, whether it's blocking various news outlets in the United States. Of course, if you're in other countries, there's other aspects of activism you can be involved in. So there's a lot of ways to get active and to alert people and to fight. And some people are interrupting the flow of weapons into Israel. So there's various ways. I hope we all are obsessed with genocide. And the person responded when I said, well, I hope we're all obsessed with it. Oh, and they said I should talk more about Trump, was the other thing. And I pointed out that when Trump is in power, I actually do criticize him greatly for being a piece of utter human garbage, which is what he is. And when he's not in power, I spend a lot less time on him, because if you're spending your time talking about this carnival show of just Joe Biden or Donald Trump, if that is most of your time, then you are wasting your time. That should not be most of your time. Now, if these people are in some level of power and you are criticizing them for their decisions or the decisions of their administration, I often will say Biden administration or the White House or the U.S. government, because I don't actually think Biden's making many decisions right now. I mean, do you really think he even chooses what color tie he has on? I doubt it, because I don't think he understands what ties are anymore. I mean, does anyone think he ties his own tie nowadays? No, of course not. They would worry to accidentally hang himself. Okay, so he's not making decisions. So I try and highlight that it's the administration as much as I can, as opposed to just him. But when these people have some level of power, or at least theatrical power, then I go after them. When Trump was in power, I went after Trump every day almost, or a lot, or the Trump administration, or the U.S. government that was underneath Trump. When these people aren't in power, you're wasting your time. You're talking about a sitcom star. You know, let me spend all day, every day, talking about why Jerry Seinfeld is wrong. By the way, he is wrong. He does endorse this genocide, so he is a piece of human garbage as well. But if I were spending every day on that, you're wasting your time. So a report has come out from the UN talking about the gut-wrenching, horrific famine. Oh, by the way, everybody, please click thumbs up. Please click subscribe. And if you have a couple of bucks, click the super chat. Throw in a couple of dollars. Even if you're not watching this live, by the way, you can click the thanks button on YouTube. It may show up as a heart with a dollar sign, which, again, says a lot about capitalism if you put dollar signs on hearts. But click that, and you can throw in a couple of bucks and keep this show going, and that would be amazing. You can also join up at leecamp.net and become part of the community there, which is my locals page. But UN report comes out saying that we are on the cusp of famine actually killing hundreds and thousands of Palestinians in Gaza. Right now, it's been awful, and many children have died from this famine, but they're saying that this is the breaking point of where thousands of Palestinians could start dying from famine. And that's basically what the report said. But as Asarad pointed out, doubt I'm pronouncing her name right, but as she pointed out, if you looked at our mainstream media, you would not know who it was that's causing this awful famine. New York Times says famine is projected for northern Gaza, experts say. I wonder how that happened. It must be that they didn't have the right seeds. You know, they weren't working with the right. Sometimes you just don't get the Monsanto water resistant seeds, and then it all goes to hell in a handbasket. You need Monsanto all the time. That's how that works. By the way, we don't hear much about Monsanto anymore. That's because they were bought by Bayer, which was founded by the Nazis and helped, was part of IG Farben, which was the Nazi company that made the chemicals for the gas chambers. So then Bayer has become a massive company, still here today, and Bayer now owns Monsanto. That doesn't mean all of the evil, parasitic, vampiric garbage that Monsanto used to do stopped happening. No, it's just under the name Bayer now. So everybody stop talking about it. Isn't that great? Isn't that great how you change your name? I talked about Blackwater yesterday. Blackwater, 4 name changes, and nobody remembers what you used to do. So nobody's talking about Monsanto or what Monsanto used to do, even though it's all being done by Bayer now. Anyway, next headline. Washington Post. Famine may already be in northern Gaza, leading aid groups say. Famine may be. How's that for a euphemism? Famine has arrived. It just showed. It may be there. We need to look. It's hiding. The famine might already be there. It's just hiding under the rubble. So we got to go look for the famine. How did it get there? I don't know. Maybe it snuck in. Remember how Hamas snuck out? Maybe famine snuck in through the border walls because they're not strong enough. That's the problem. Reuters, famine imminent. In northern Gaza, says UN-backed report, famine imminent, but maybe it's about to arrive. Famine may arrive soon. Famine imminent. Who knows who caused it? I don't know. Certainly not Israel, of course. Over 1 million Gazans are estimated to be starving. They just started starving. Starving just happened. Starving has happened in Gaza. And then they even have a subheading on this, which also succeeds in avoiding the name Israel, the name of the perpetrators, the name of the genocidal maniacs. The subheading, the subtitle is Food Insecurity Experts also warn of imminent famine in northern Gaza. Like it's all imminent. It's all showing up any moment. Please take a moment, everyone, to hit share and let other people know about this. I am one of the most heavily suppressed, so it's not easy to get the word out there. But so this report has come out, and of course there's famine. Israel will not let aid in. I have brought to you how not only is aid not getting in, but they've blocked all of the entrances. When they let aid in, it is a tiny amount, and then when they let aid in, they attack the people trying to get to the aid, right? We've seen multiple flower massacres is what they're calling them, FLOUR, multiple flower massacres where the IDF kills in one way or another, sometimes shooting, sometimes bombing, people trying to get aid. So Israel, and part of that is a psychological attack on as part of this genocide in order to make Palestinians not know if they can go get food. Are we going to get killed by getting food? So part of that is psychological, and part of it is just to see how many Palestinians they can kill, which we know is Israel's goal from day to day. But as I brought to you many days, and I'm about to show a clip, by the way, of our State Department spokesperson and all of their gobbledygook word salads and bullshit they bring you. They bring to all of us. It's their gift to us, like one of those turd cannons that they spray in pig farms to put the fecal matter up in the air so it wafts around, so it doesn't just pool. That's kind of what a State Department spokesperson is, right? It's just one of those fecal matter cannons up into the air. They bring it to all of us. But what I was going to say is, you see that that Israel's propaganda is cracking, right? It is collapsing left and right. That's why they've had to come up with the whole systematic rape thing that has again been debunked, but it hasn't stopped our mainstream media and so many others from just parroting it. They're saying systematic rape. They're not saying, oh, there might have been a sexual assault that we don't have evidence of yet, but it might be out there. Instead, it's systematic. It was a plan. That is their thing. And it's because Frank Luntz and all other pollsters have found that people are far more upset by learning about systematic rape than they are about systematic murder. And for whatever reasons, you can argue about the psychology of it, but for whatever reason. And so Israel has decided to put forward that propaganda because that is the one they've found is most successful at getting people to endorse this genocide, to support this genocide. But I actually was bringing up a good angle of this, which is that we are seeing a collapse. Their propaganda is collapsing left and right. The favorability of Israel around the world is collapsing. And even in Haaretz, which is a Israeli newspaper, it's kind of like the New York Times in that it is, some people think it's more left-wing than a lot of the other far-right lunatic papers that are in Israel, including, I believe it's called Hayom, which was founded and owned by Sheldon Adelson and the Adelson family, Americans owning the largest, most read newspaper in all of Israel. What does that tell you about the in-bed relationship of the U.S. and Israel? I wonder, when the U.S. and Israel are in bed together, do they do the cutting the hole in the sheet thing? Anyway. But so Haaretz is viewed as the kind of more New York Times. Oh, that's the liberal, that's the lefty, like right-wingers would call it lefty when it's not left-wing, it's just liberal. But anyway, even they are very much fading on supporting, fully endorsing this ongoing, they call it a war, and they call it a war with Hamas. That shows you their propaganda. It's a genocide, and it very little of it has to do with Hamas. But Israel, the title of this Haaretz article is, or analysis is, Israel's lingering, aimless war is a one-way ticket to international isolation. And they mean for themselves, right? Because this is an Israeli newspaper, so they're talking for themselves and their world and their nation. Over 5 months into the war on Gaza, Benjamin Netanyahu is clueless in terms of the war's attainable objectives, but resolute about subjecting its management to his political survival. If this trend continues, Israel will cement its status as a pariah on the world stage. Also, this does fit with we're seeing a coalescing of the propaganda from the Biden administration, from others who are slightly critical of Israel, which is to put it all on Netanyahu and his right-wing government to say, oh, no, the rest of Israel wouldn't do genocide, even though over 75% of Israelis support this genocide. But the rest of Israelis wouldn't do it. It's just that Netanyahu's so crazy. It's just him being crazy. It's kind of like when Trump was the president and the U.S. empire was U.S. empiring, doing the same shit we've done for decades and decades and decades. People would go, it's Trump. It's just Trump is bad guy. Trump. If we get rid of Trump, it all changes. Oh, really? Because we got rid of Trump, and let's see. Looks like it's all the same in terms of the U.S. empire, military-industrial complex. And shall I remind you all that Trump endorses and is behind and would high five on all of this. If Trump were in office right now, it would be exactly the same. The actions of the two administrations, except that you'd have spokespeople not hemming and hawing about genocide. They would just be like, we love it. Gaza's a shithole country anyway, is what he'd probably say in exactly that accent, except it's not a country. But okay, so I just wanted to bring you that even Haaretz is backing away from a full-on endorsement of this atrocities in Israel. For those of you joining late, I got stories coming up on the Gaza pier, the truth about that, the war that the Democrats have declared on third parties, even more than their just standard war. You know, their everyday war. They were like, let's kick it into high gear. And that's coming from NBC News. That's not even a secret. But first, let's see some clips from our good old State Department spokesperson, Patel. What's his first name? I forget it. But anyway, Deputy Spokesperson, Patel. And here he is addressing the torture of UN staff, which it has now been revealed and confirmed that Israel has tortured UN staff in order to get that UN staff to point to other UN staff and say they were involved in October 7th. So Israel ultimately said 12 members of UN staff were involved in October 7th. Basically, all that's been debunked, or there's been no evidence of it actually to back it up. It's just Israel saying, we know it. That's what happened. But let's hear good old State Department spokesperson Patel has to say about it.
Last evening, our colleague, our correspondent, was arrested by ADF in Al-Shifa.
Oh wait, I'm playing that one next. So let's get to the one about the UN staff being tortured.
When you originally talked about the allegations against the 12 staff, you had said that UNRWA itself was the one that forwarded those allegations along.
UNRWA, most of you know, but for the tiny percentage you don't, UNRWA is the UN organization, the relief organization that Israel wants to destroy. And when you say relief organization, it is not a small one. This is massive. It is 30,000 employees. It is over 700 schools they run in Palestine. It is over 9.2 million hospital visits for Palestinians every year, and tons of food. It is massive, and Israel's trying to crush it, and they successfully got the U.S. and other countries to withdraw funding from UNRWA. And Israel despises UNRWA, both because it helps Palestinians, but because it has the word refugee, I believe. Wait, hold on. Okay, before I sound done, let's make sure. Yeah, no, it okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Please cut out the part where I just had a seizure. So the name stands for United Nations Relief and Works Agency, but the full name, past the UNRWA, is United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. So I was right to what I was going to say rather than looking dumb, but it has the word refugees in the title. So Israel can't stand it because it is an acknowledgement by the UN that all these Palestinians, like 5 million or something, 2.3 million in Gaza, all these Palestinians are 1 out of 75, by the way, in Gaza have been murdered. So that's the numbers anyway. But all these Palestinians are refugees, which when you say someone's refugees, that means they came from somewhere. And Israel doesn't want to acknowledge that because Israel stole all that land. So that's yet another reason they hate UNRWA.
You said that you found them credible, but since then, UNRWA itself has said that its staff were tortured by Israel in order to get some of those confessions extracted. Does that change your view of the evidence that was presented by Israel? And if UNRWA was credible enough for you to believe the allegations the first time, is UNRWA credible enough when they make an allegation of torture against its staff?
So the torture, by the way, the accusation of torture was only 1 week ago. It was revealed 1 week ago. So, but anyway, he's saying when UNRWA said that they were that their staff was not involved in October 7th, or they said there could be evidence that that 12 members out of 30,000 were involved in October 7th, but no evidence has been brought forward. There's actually not been any. But so he's saying, well, does that, if you rely on them for that, shouldn't you rely on them when they say that their staff was tortured?
I've not seen that reporting, Ryan.
I brought you this the other day. They've never, anytime they're asked about something they disagree with, they've just never seen the report. They've never read anything. That's just, I have no idea.
But I will just note that we continue to find the allegations that were laid out a number of months ago to be credible. And we also welcome the swiftness.
By the way, he says we find them to be credible. They have not found them to be credible. They've actually found the opposite. They've found that they can't actually verify that any UN staff were involved on October 7th. That's what actually has been found. Now, the U.S. will continue to say, but it could. Israel tells us that thing happened, and Israel's always reliable. They never lie. Also, he has completely dodged the key part of the question, which is, what about UN staff being tortured by Israel? That would be unprecedented for UN staff to be tortured by a country, and for the U.S. and many countries around the world to continue to support that. Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, torture UN. Why not?
at which UNRWA informed not just the United States, but others about this, but also the swiftness in which the United Nations launched its own investigation mechanism and its own independent review. And we look forward to seeing those results. And
we look forward to, even though we've already withdrawn millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding from this organization, we look forward to the report that actually tells us whether any of this is true. You know, one day we might get that report. But in the meantime, let's just pull hundreds of millions of dollars from an aid organization. And I've always said, I said from the beginning of this, 12 members of UNRWA were involved in October 7th. I said from the beginning, even if that were true, that you had 12 crazy rogue members in UNRWA, it doesn't matter. It's a 30,000 person operation. If 12 dudes who work for Amazon rob a bank, you don't shut down Amazon. It's like, not that I wouldn't want Amazon shut down, but you get my point. It's insane to say, oh, well, 12 people were involved. By the way, I think they've now decreased it to, we think 6 people were involved, but whatever. It's bananas. It is pure imperial insanity to just shut down a 30,000 person aid organization and cancel 9.2 million medical visits a year. It's because we think 12 guys might have done something.
To echo Secretary Blinken.
Meanwhile, sorry, I just thought of this. Meanwhile, Boy Scouts of America still going strong, still there, even though they've had thousands of victims come forward from Boy Scouts of America, sexually assaulted victims. Boy Scouts of America still there. I mean, they are bankrupt, but they're still there. So haven't shut that down. That's going. Catholic Church is doing fine. Keeping that going. Doesn't matter, but 12 guys might have been involved in October 7th, so clearly shut down the entire aid organization.
Want these allegations thoroughly investigated so that there is clear accountability and measures put in place so this doesn't happen again.
Right. Measures put, God, don't you want to just punch this guy? Don't,
And we want all this to happen because we believe very strongly that UNRWA plays a critical role in producing life-saving assistance in the region, not just in Gaza, but the broader Middle East as well.
Okay, to me, that sentence actually is the most key sentence of this entire idiocy. We believe that UNRWA plays a critical role to life-saving aspects of the Palestinian population. Life-saving. So what we're going to do now is defund it. That's that's our next play. Defund the thing that I have just said is life-saving for millions of people. Let's defund it. That's the best way to go forward. Absolutely.
They are vital players when it comes to food, medicine, shelter, and other humanitarian support.
Your position, which is in opposition, as they said, to so many allies around the world, has encouraged Congress to move forward with a ban. There's now an agreement between some Democrats and some Republicans to continue the ban, I think, throughout the rest of the year.
So he's talking about ban on funding. So this idiot up at the podium says this is a life-saving organization for millions of people. Food, medicine, schools, so many other aspects. And we support defunding it. And so does Congress.
Is that something that the State Department would support, tying the State Department's hands, even if the report comes back?
You've heard me talk about this before broadly when it comes to the supplemental bill that is being negotiated in Congress. These are active and ongoing things that are happening, so I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole too much. But broadly,
his whole job is to talk about ongoing things that are happening. That is the whole job description. Stand up at that dumb podium and talk about things that are happening. What are you? From here on out, the State Department's only going to talk about things that aren't happening anymore. Things that it's mainly going to talk. It's mainly the 1980s. We're going to have press conferences about the 1980s, Reagan administration mostly. But yeah, anything that's currently happening, not going to discuss. His whole job is to discuss things that are actively happening.
We support the contours of this supplemental bill. We believe that it is vital for.
We support the supplemental bill of making sure to no longer fund UNRWA while we say they are a life-saving aid organization. All right, Damaris, getting the super chats going. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Damaris, so much for the donations. You keep this show going. We are doing our best to build despite all of the censorship and suppression I have faced. Many of you know that my last YouTube channel, with 250,000 subscribers, was banned around the world, continues to be banned around the world. And was that for being wildly racist or supporting, attacking people? No, it was for being anti-war and anti-capitalist and wanting truth, justice, and equality around the world. So that channel's been banned, but luckily this new one is growing. And thank you so much for the super chats. And like I said, even if you're not watching this live, even if you're watching this later, you can still click the thanks tab and throw a couple of bucks to the channel, to the show, and keep this show going. I just wanted to point out that I can't take that State Department spokesperson seriously ever, because I'm pretty sure he's the manservant from What We Do in the Shadows, the vampire show. Pretty sure that's him. Like, what's it called? A familiar? I'm pretty sure he's the vampire familiar from What We Do in the Shadows. Absolutely. And I'm glad he got another job. I mean, it's, cleaning the bed linens for vampires. Although it's kind of the same job, isn't it? I didn't realize that. He's basically doing the same job. Cleaning bed linens for vampires. That's absolutely what he still does. Good for him. Okay. Should I play one more clip of him? What do you think, folks? Do we need one more clip of that idiot of the State Department? Sure, why not? Why not? I'll try not to take so long on this one.
Last evening, our colleague, our correspondent, was arrested by ADF in Al-Shifa complex outskirts. He was wearing his vest, his helmet, he has his equipment with him. He was beaten, stripped, and got his equipment destroyed.
I covered that story yesterday, by the way. The Al Jazeera journalist who was beaten and stripped and tortured in one degree or another. A journalist clearly marked, and he was at Al-Shifa Hospital. So basically, the IDF didn't want to have a journalist there while they committed their genocidal acts. And yeah, he's now been freed. He was held, I think, naked and blindfolded for 12 hours or more.
This is, the IDF clearly saw that he's a journalist with his equipment, and this didn't stop them, and just add him to a long list of journalists that being either killed, injured, or detained by the Israeli forces. Do you have any comments?
We're aware of those reports, and we've asked the government of Israel for more information. But in general, we have been
We've asked the government of Israel for more information. That's who you go to when you want to find out whether they're committing war crimes like attacking and torturing journalists, right? You go to the people doing it and you say, "Did you do this?" Like you go to Charles Manson, or you go to Ted Bundy or something, and you say, "Did you do the bad thing?" And then you wait to hear what they have to say about it, right? Because they're gonna tell the truth, generally speaking.
clear that journalists play a vital role, and that no journalist should be targeted in order to silence their voices in this.
Everybody hear that? Everybody catch that one? No journalist should be targeted to silence their voices. I got 2 words for you, State Department. Julian Assange. All right? Maybe it could be 4 words. Julian motherfucker Assange. Julian Assange has been tortured by our State Department, by our government for 10 years now, over 10 years. Maybe it's 11, 4 or 5 in Belmarsh. Just horrific, the torture of Julian Assange. And here you have our State Department standing up at a podium going, "We think every journalist should not be harmed or should not be kept from reporting." It is utter bullshit. This is the garbage that comes out, that is vomited up out of a collapsing empire, is this absolute trash.
conflict or any other. And the circumstances are as such in Gaza, where we believe the journalism and the voices of journalists is more important than ever. But again, as it relates to this,
more and more than ever. Yeah. On top of the fact that our mainstream media barely ever covers the fact that more journalists have been killed in Gaza than since October 7th, than were killed in the entire Vietnam War or killed in the entire World War II. The most journalists that were murdered last year, almost the entirety of them, were killed by Israel in Gaza because Israel is targeting journalists, whereas in almost every other war of recent times, they don't target journalists. But so not only does the mainstream media almost never cover this, but he says it's so important for them to do their work in Gaza. Well, then why don't you ever show their work in Gaza? Like, our mainstream media so rarely shows the work of these incredibly, ridiculously brave journalists in Gaza. So here he is saying, oh, their work is so important, and yet we will never cover their work. Bobby made a great point. I didn't want to say no journalist is targeted, because obviously some outside of Gaza, some are very much targeted. And Bobby Taylor in the comments pointed out Gonzalo Lira, who was the American and Chilean dual citizenship, lived in Ukraine. And, he said many things over his career that are not in line with what I believe, but he was clearly murdered in Ukraine for speaking out about the proxy war with Russia, speaking out about the truth about the U.S. involvement of that proxy war, and creating that proxy war. And for that, Gonzalo Lira was, he was basically murdered. He was put in a horrifying, horrible situation in Ukrainian prison and allowed to die, as he said in his video statements when he got out for a brief time before they recaptured him, that he was not of good health. And so if you put him in a cell and don't treat him right, I think they knew they would be able to kill him via neglect. And that's exactly what happened. Thank you so much, duly noted, for the donation. Biden's campaign has been bathed in the blood of Palestinians, and Schumer is trying desperately to wipe it off on Netanyahu's backside just after firmly planting his lips. Yes, they are trying to blame it on Netanyahu because they think that will get them off clean for supporting and endorsing and facilitating and funding and arming this genocide. Okay, let me move on rather than continuing with this boy servant for vampires. I want to get to, let's do this first, because I did say I had more information on the pier that Israel is building, the U.S. and Israel are building. And it's coming from Electronic Intifada, but also, I'll bring that in a second. But also, let's just start off by saying it's ridiculous on its face, right, this pier, because if you really wanted aid to immediately get to the people of Gaza who are desperate, who are starving, who are dying of starvation and dying of unclean water and dying of having no medical system that has been bombed to hell, if you really wanted to get aid to them, you open the gates. You open the gates. In Egypt, you open the gates. There's 5 or 6 other crossings where Israel could open the gates and aid could get in. There are 1,000 trucks waiting to get in. You let them in and you stop firing at people trying to get food and trying to get aid. Okay? That's what you do. End of story. And the U.S. could force Israel to do that immediately. Instead, they've got this ridiculous, we're going to send a ship from the U.S. and build a pier, and then there's other trucks that are going to come in that Israel's going to let in to build a pier so that we can then have ships come and bring aid. It's like 1,000 times harder than what would be just giving them aid. And I now have more on why that is. Why a pier? And I also wanted to bring this, that I posted this today. The Biden administration has announced, the U.S. government has announced, they've unveiled a new path to get aid to the desperate people of Gaza. And it's seen here. I believe it's a Rube Goldberg machine, and you put the aid in one side, and if everything goes right and you all those little things go off, then you eventually get it to the people in Gaza. This, by the way, is no more insane than building a pier when you could just open the gates and allow the aid in. And someone criticized me when I tweeted this out, saying this is not a good topic to joke about. But I think that most of you know the joke is the Biden administration, the U.S. government, other governments that are saying a peer is the answer. That's the real joke, sadly. That's the real joke. And I am mocking them making a joke of getting aid to children, to starving children. But okay, let's get to the real purpose of Gaza's port, Gaza's pier, Gaza's port, whatever you want to call it. Now, many are saying that it is to get gas. They want to extract the gas that's been found off of Gaza, and I have no doubt they want that gas, but that's not the real. Israel wanted to destroy Gaza and clear out and ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians for decades and decades, even before they knew there was gas, a lot of oil off the coast there of Gaza. But so yes, they want to get that oil, but that's not happening right now, and they can build a pier anytime. So I said this on the last live stream. I don't actually think that that's the main reason, because again, they could do that anytime. They can do it after they've finished ethnic cleansing, after they finish this genocide, and that can't be the real reason to do it now. Thank you, Luis, for the donation. Damn straight, Luis. Damn straight. So, you know, I'm not saying they would never use it for that, but I just don't think that's the reason. But Electronic Intifada makes some great points here. But let me just read something I did not know. The Jerusalem Post said the maritime corridor plan was Prime Minister Netanyahu's idea, citing an unnamed senior diplomatic source. Netanyahu had reportedly first proposed the plan to Biden in October, way before the famine, way before people were starving to death in Gaza. Yes, they were already bombing them to death in Gaza, but they weren't starving yet. Meaning Netanyahu had this plan up his sleeve. He was ready for this port pier idea. And I'm going to get to why in a second. And Netanyahu pressed the issue again with the U.S. president in January. So this is a Netanyahu idea, which means a lot. Like, if this is coming from Netanyahu, if this is coming from that lunatic, messianic, right-wing cabal that runs Israel, then why? Why does Israel want it so bad? Analysts have speculated that this could be a ploy to eliminate Egypt as an outlet between the Gaza Strip and the rest of the world, and sever the coastal enclave's reliance on Egypt economically and politically by way of Egyptian-controlled Rafah crossing. The Rafah crossing, the sole point of exit and entry for most people in Gaza. So this is a really important point that I hadn't thought too much about, which is that Gaza is completely isolated from any other countries except Israel, with one exception, and that is the crossing. Thank you, Sherry, for the donation. Damn straight, Sherry. And that is the crossing with Egypt, that one crossing with Egypt. Now, El-Sisi's not a good guy, right? That's not like he's like, oh, the poor children. That's not him, okay? I think he has like 60,000 political prisoners right now. You don't have to run around acting like El-Sisi's a good guy. Now, so he's not opening. He claims it's because he doesn't want to facilitate a genocide by saying, facilitate ethnic cleansing by saying Israel can just push all these people out of Gaza and move on with their lives and just steal all the land. But the real reason is because he doesn't want 2 million people in his country. And so by cutting off the Egypt crossing, and of course, Israel doesn't want anybody from Gaza coming into Israel. So that means Gaza would be entirely cut off from anything except the water. And so the reason they would build a port or a pier there is because that facilitates their ethnic cleansing. And I weirdly have not heard a lot of people talk about it in these terms, that this is in Netanyahu's insane, genocidal, psychopathic mind. This is the way to finish the ethnic cleansing. You force everyone, because they're not going to let any of these people into Israel. Even if it were to, we're going to move them through Israel to some other country. Even if Jordan said, we'll take them all or something, they'd still have to go through Israel. Israel not bringing them through Israel. So that would mean they'd have to go through Egypt, but Egypt's saying no. So this allows Israel a way to push to ethnically cleanse the entirety of Gaza, push over 2 million people out of Gaza without using Egypt and without using Israel. Now, they also are fine with killing as many as possible. So they don't just kill them with bombs. They're killing them with disease. They're killing them with the fact that so many of the wounded will likely die. They're killing them with famine, etc. So it's going to be under 2 million soon that are left alive. 1 in 75 have already been murdered. And so this is actually, the final solution for Israel is to push the remaining Palestinians alive out on this port so that they can get on ships to whatever country would take them. Maybe it's a certain number of African countries. And that is the definition of ethnic cleansing, right? That's not okay. We shouldn't celebrate this and go, yay, ethnic cleansing. This is horrific. But this is Israel's solution to ethnically cleanse the whole area. And to me, this just fits perfectly. The motivation, why now? Why has Netanyahu wanted this from day one? It fits it ticks off all of the boxes. Abdel Bari Atwan, a Gaza-born, world-renowned Palestinian journalist, invoked the U.S.-facilitated evacuation of thousands of Palestinian guerrilla fighters of the PLO from Beirut in 1982 as an insight into what these plans could possibly suggest. The U.S. facilitated an evacuation in 1982, similarly by water, and those Palestinian fighters were, here's the key, transferred by U.S. ships off Beirut to Cyprus, but Cyprus was not going to allow them to stay, and then eventually to Tunisia that allowed them to stay. That, I believe, is Israel's plan. But again, that is ethnic cleansing. It is a war crime. It is horrific. It is not like a yay moment, but I think that is Israel's plan. Atwan indicated that the maritime corridor would create a pathway for the forcible evacuation of Palestinians by sea. Other analysts have expressed similar fears. And I want to bring you something that I don't know if anyone's been covering other than Dan Cohen. So this, I doubt you've heard this fact. Dan Cohen reported on it in 2015, 8 years ago, if I'm doing my math right. Nope, 9 years ago. Well, depends on the month, but 9 years ago. I was close. I was only off by one. 9 years ago, reported on this in 2015. Israeli minister proposes building an island off Gaza coast so Israel can, quote, disengage while maintaining the siege. So they've been pushing this idea since 2015 to achieve this. Israeli military intelligence officials, foreign military and business representatives gathered for 2 days near Tel Aviv at the first intelligence, terror, and special forces in the global jihad era and the information revolution defense conference. Jesus, could you put another 5 more ridiculous words into your dumb title? Israeli Minister of Intelligence and Transportation, Yisrael Katz, shared plans to build an Israeli-controlled island off the coast of Gaza as a way for Israel to, quote-unquote, disengage while continuing their siege of the area. While Israeli officials often publicly claim that Israel, quote-unquote, left Gaza in 2005 when it evacuated, Gaza has remained under Israeli occupation, a crippling siege, and a naval blockade. Yeah, Israel did not stop controlling Gaza when they left in 2005. They actually control it worse, basically. But okay, I wanted to bring you that because that is from 2015 that Israel was attempting to do this exact thing. He reiterated what is known as the Singapore option, in which some in the military intelligence apparatus proposed to build an island and seaport off of Gaza's coast. This would allow Israel to maintain the naval blockade while allowing import and export of goods and facilitating travel, i.e. ethnic cleansing. Military planners have gone as far as measuring the sea shelf 17 kilometers out with the idea of a bridge connecting the prospective island to the shore, according to Katz. So there you go. Israel's been planning this for 9 years, at least that aspect of it. Okay, let's move on to the Democrats have declared war on third parties in a way that is actually more than they've declared war on third parties in the past. By the way, in a few minutes, we will be at justrumble.com/Lee Camp and my locals page, but we'll keep going here for a while. And by the way, if you have a couple of bucks, throw them in, hit the thanks button, hit the super chat button. If you're not watching this live, you can still donate and support this show. You can also donate if you think this episode, by the way, so far, even if just so far, if you think this episode's been worth 38 cents, then become a member at leecamp.net. 38 cents an episode, and you get all kinds of cool shit, right? You get my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You get all these live streams whenever you want them. You get exclusive clips. You get exclusive Q&As. You get to be part of the community over there. So become part of the community. leecamp.net will forward you to the locals page, and then you scroll down to become a subscriber. But all right, the Democrats prepare to go to war against third-party candidates. And so most of you know this, but that would mean RFK Jr., Cornel West, Claudia De La Cruz, Jill Stein. I think there's a couple of lunatic libertarians running. All those people. They want to go at all of them. Perhaps RFK is the one they're most scared of, but the Democratic National Committee is building its first team to counter third-party and independent presidential candidates. People involved told NBC News as the party and its allies prepare for a potential all-out war on candidates they view as spoilers. So I'll just take a moment before we keep going to point out that the Democrats, and to a lesser degree the Republicans, but both of them, but the Democrats have been at war against third parties for years. They have done everything humanly possible to make sure third parties cannot have a legitimate run for the presidency of the United States. All right. Getting on the ballot is incredibly tough. Sometimes you get on the ballot, and as with Matthew Ho, who ran for senator in North Carolina on the Green Party ticket, as with Matthew Ho, sometimes you get enough ballots to get on the signatures to get on the ballot, and then the committee that's Democrats just says, "Oh no, never mind, you're not on the ballot anyway," which is what happened to him. Now, ultimately, he took them to court, and luckily he won. But that's what they do, is shit like that. Oh, you got the incredibly hard to get number of signatures to get on the ballot so that you can actually possibly be voted for, and then they just say, "No, never mind." But they have a million other ways to rig this system that, I'm not even going to spend much time on, but everything from the way they represent the ballots, what names they put first, how they put them on there, whether they make them confusing or not. Sometimes they will give you a ballot that doesn't have the third party on it, and you say, "Where's so-and-so, where's RFK Jr., whatever," and they say, "Oh, well, here, fill out a provisional ballot." They have provisional ballots, which are placebo ballots. Basically, you think you voted, and they don't even count them, or if they do count them, they count them months later when no one's even paying attention. The election's long over. There's so many tricks that they have. The biggest one, of course, being just money. I mean, the amount of money needed to win in even the smaller races is just crazy. Millions upon millions of dollars. No other country spends this. Last election cycle was $14.4 billion spent to purchase our elections. And I just want to point this out, which I'm the only person I've ever heard pointing this out. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I'm the only person I've heard pointing this out in this way. Many people have pointed to the study that shows that the party the candidate who spends the most money on the election wins 90% of the time in the House and 80-something% of the time in the Senate. So vast majority of the time, spend the most money, you win. But here's what I have never heard someone else say, at least not in this way. The two candidates who spend the most on any election, House, Senate, whatever, they win 100% of the time. 100% of the time. And the third party is always going to be the one spending less money on the election. They're going to be the one spending, usually, unless there's no Republican running or no Democrat running, they're going to be the third least spent, right? Or third most spent, however you want to phrase it. So that means that it is 100% rigged against the third party candidate simply by money. Simply by money. But then, of course, you have media. And there's two kinds of media, right? There's bought media and earned media. So because the third party doesn't have enough money, they can't spend the money on ads or other media type of other types of media that you have to pay money for. And so they're not going to get that kind of media. But then there's what they call earned media, which means you're just being talked about because you're interesting and you're like Cornel West and you just get talked about because you're a really fascinating and impressive guy and you're running a campaign. That type of media, sure, it exists. Cornel West has been covered here and there, but it's very rare. RFK Jr. is covered here and there, but it's rather rare compared to Biden or Trump. I'm sure Biden has been covered 100 times more than RFK Jr. or Cornel West, and Trump has been covered 1,000,000 times more than RFK Jr. or Cornel West. Good or bad stories, it doesn't matter. Trump has proven again and again that you can have bad stories about you all day long, and you still win because you're being talked about. I think Kanye West's album sales are fine, despite the fact that why is he talked about? For being an awful human being, all right? For being just a terrible human being. And yet, still talked about, still selling albums. The DNC, to continue from the article, the DNC has hired veteran Democratic operative Liz Smith, best known for her work guiding the 2020 presidential campaign of Pete Buttigieg, to help oversee an aggressive communications component of its strategy, which also includes opposition research and legal challenges. So not only was Pete Buttigieg responsible for putting the nail in the coffin for Bernie's 2020 run, he also greatly harmed Bernie's 2016 run. This, I assume she may have even been involved. I don't know, but Pete Buttigieg and his campaign created what was called the Shadow app, which was the app that was used in the Iowa caucus and was supposed to be used in the Nevada caucuses as well in order to add up all the numbers. Now, the Shadow app, which was introduced like a week before the caucuses, and they were just told, oh, put your numbers into this, completely collapsed on the day of the caucus. So that, guess what? Pete Buttigieg, despite absolutely losing the caucuses, could walk out and say he won. And even if Bernie Sanders said, no, I won, they didn't have the numbers to prove it because of the Shadow app. Now, later we found out that the Shadow app was created by a company that was owned by Pete Buttigieg's like campaign manager or someone connected to the Pete Buttigieg campaign. So Buttigieg and his goons create an app that destroys the ability to decide who won the Iowa caucuses, and they would have used it again in Nevada, but Nevada saw the chaos in Iowa and then didn't use it. So their goal was to crash, to destroy, to upend both caucuses by using this ridiculous app. And it succeeded in Iowa, completely stopped Bernie's momentum from being able to walk out of Iowa saying he won. And that's the, people you want running this DNC effort to go after third parties. Here's a quote from one of the spokespeople for the DNC about attacking third parties. We're facing an unprecedented election, and we know the GOP is already working to prop up third-party candidates like Robert Kennedy Jr. to make them stalking horses for Donald Trump. Now, this is an ongoing, bullshit thing where despite the fact that the third party, be it Jill Stein or RFK, generally takes almost the same amount from Democrats and Republicans, especially with Jill Stein when it was Hillary Clinton running. She took equally from about a third of Jill Stein voters would have been Hillary voters if they had not had Jill Stein. A third would have been Trump voters if they had not had Jill Stein. And a third would have not voted at all if they had not had Jill Stein. So it would not have changed the election. And yet the DNC runs around going, oh, Jill Stein cost us the election. No, you putting up a shit candidate, a shit corrupt candidate, you lost the election, okay? Hillary goons. So Pat Dennis, president of American Bridge, a Democratic opposition research group, said there is some Jill Stein hangover. A lot of people, including me, regret that we didn't go after her further because they like to pretend they lost because of Jill Stein, which is not why they lost. The single biggest threat that helps put Trump back in the White House is third-party candidates. It's not Biden's age. It's not whether Trump gets convicted. It's not any of that stuff, says Joe Trippi, who's the former Obama strategist. Yeah, that's, again, bullshit. It absolutely is. But if Biden loses, it's because he's garbage. It's because he is an ancient, antiquated corpse that has not done 99% of the things he said he was going to do. But then on the things he supposedly has done, like student loan debt, he's erased a fraction of student loan debt. He could have done far more. And meanwhile, you know, if people are struggling, there's debates as to how many people across America live paycheck to paycheck. I saw one study. I don't know if I have it up. No, I don't have it up right now. But I saw one study saying 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And then there was a little Twitter correction that said, no, those are not the correct numbers. The correct numbers are 54% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Either one is horrific in the richest country in the world. Or what was the richest country in the world? 54, half of all Americans, even if that's the right number, live paycheck to paycheck, barely scraping by, while we send trillions of dollars to go bomb children. And that's fine. That's the correct number. Those are the good numbers right there. Half of all Americans barely scraping by. I'd like to thank Igstar for becoming a monthly supporter on Rumble. Damn straight Igstar. Yes. That's something you can do over at Rumble. So let's take this opportunity to head on over to Rumble and do the rest of this show. I do have more stories coming up, such as what has just happened in Niger, kicking out the U.S. military. All of that is coming up and much more over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. We will also continue live on Locals, which if you're a member at Locals, you're supporting this show. You're making this show possible. You're a hero. I love you. Also, I do these live streams 4 days a week. Just show up. Just come on. Just show up. What do you have to lose? 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific. I also have Government Secrets live on my YouTube page on Wednesdays, but we're not doing that tomorrow because I have to travel, but usually on Wednesdays. But anyway, this show is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Just show up. Why would you miss it? Why would you? But still click subscribe and click the bell icon. Maybe you'll get the alert. I don't know if you will, but just show up. All right, let's head over to Rumble. I got a lot more for you. It's free to watch on Rumble. Did I mention that? Free to watch on Rumble, rumble.com/Lee Camp. You know what? I'll be generous today. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to give you the link just this time. I'm going to put it in the chat for you just this time. So you have the easy ride. Wait, that wasn't it. No. Okay, hold on. Ignore that comment that just said HTML. All right, here's the link. Easy ride over to Rumble. Click it and go join us there. To anyone who's so lazy they can't click that link, I still love you. I don't understand it. I don't understand unless you don't have any arms. And if you don't have any arms, here's the thing: is people with you ever watch a video? I haven't known people with no arms, but you ever watch a video of people with no arms? They're amazing. How they get through life is incredible. So I bet you a person with no arms could actually get over to that Rumble link quicker than the rest of you. So for those of you who are so lazy and you have arms, what's your excuse? The guy with no arms got there quicker than you. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there, and we will keep going in 3.